So I'm just going to basically give an overview of the main Linux certifications available, some preparation, and some resources that you can have online and otherwise. I got my IHC. It took me a bit of time. I'll explain why. But basically, I wanted to give the talk after I'd done this certification because I think it's worth talking about, and I think certifications are a good thing for Linux. Why certification? Firstly, to break the myth that Linux doesn't offer coherent support packages, and I think that's vital. For the future of Linux, that has good support, and something that business people, types, and managers, and CEOs, and all the people that control all the money in organisations can look at and see something that represents some degree of something they can benchmark against. Doing certification keeps your learning skills focused, and it's so easy with Linux to get really into threads and strands of technologies, and it's hard to pull yourself back sometimes to actually stay focused on some of the most important elements of running an operating system as a workstation and a server. So for me, that was really important. Obviously, CVs, job interviews, ultimately better pay, we'd hope, quality employment, we'd hope. There's always that feel-good factor. There's the challenge and the goal of going for something and actually achieving that. And the people that do control the money can hunt for contracts. So it gives your employer some credits, and it does entice staff to businesses as well if they know that there's Linux certification going on there. People are interested in joining companies. And really importantly, is to ease the adoption of open source in business. And again, this relates to other certification programs. The Microsoft and Cisco certification programs are well known, and to have Linux up there as well is important to get this technology used widespread. And you're less likely to make mistakes without knowing it. We all make mistakes. It doesn't matter how much training you've had, how much experience you've had. It could be 4 o'clock in the morning, you've been up for 12 hours working on this problem, you start making mistakes. At least with the training in place there, you're making mistakes. There's something you can come back to. You've made some mistakes, and on the same side of on the different side of the coin is can help you know what you don't know. And if you've got a good thread of training and learning, it keeps you focused. Then you can see the important things that you need to learn on the side of that, and something you can come back to, and it keeps you focused in that sense as well. And I was surprised when I started off thinking about becoming certified. I mean, there was only one option for me, and that was Red Hat. I'll explain a bit more about that, but looking around, there was actually some really, really good Linux training packages out there, and this was a bit of a surprise to me. I'd already was well into the Red Hat program, so I didn't want to deviate from that before I got the RHCE, but certainly afterwards, and looking at the other packages, it is quite good. They're the 4 main training programs out there, and they're actually very, very different. I'll start with Linux Plus, CompTIA online organisation that provides lots of training packages that are sort of intermediate level, ranging from Cisco to Linux, Microsoft packages, A+, networking, and so on. The CompTIA is a vendor-neutral certification, so it looks at the generic side of Linux across many distributions, and it can validate the knowledge of individuals with really a minimum of 6 to 12 months of practical Linux experience. So it's not really high power stuff, but certainly if a company was to adopt a number of Linux workstations, to have their workstation users with a Linux Plus would certainly help them. Professionals holding the CompTIA Linux Plus are supposed to be able to explain the fundamental management of Linux systems from the command line, which is quite in depth, and demonstrate a knowledge of user administration, understand file permissions, software configurations, and management of workstations, and to a limited degree some server services as well. So overall, it looked quite good, and I certainly know a few colleagues of mine are studying with CompTIA, and they talk to me and say, "Oh, that looks interesting. I might do the Linux one. You know a bit about this. Do you think it'd be worth doing?" Well, I say they're doing other courses at the same level to broaden their overall IT knowledge. Then I'd say yes, and for someone, certainly guys here would be easily be able to train that to them or give advice to guide them. Okay, so I'll move on to Red Hat now. All right, that's gone about lots more than we should have done. I'll stick it there. So as you all know about Red Hat and what it is and how widely distributed it is and so on, we don't really need to explain too much of that. Basically the free versions Fedora and the subscription enterprise versions available as well at a cost, providing support and updates. Red Hat certification, RHCT and RHCE is extremely useful for an organisation to have, because it eliminates really the need to pay for expensive packaging, expensive subscriptions on the enterprise editions. If you've got a few staff with those kind of qualifications, then an organisation can go the enterprise route and happily have those kind of servers and workstations with the staff managing them. The certification is based on the very latest Red Hat Enterprise Linux versions. I mean, personally, I think the content is applicable to lots of Linux distributions, especially RPM-based distributions. But the technology and the content is also relevant to Debian. And I recently started using Debian. I say recently, about a year ago. And certainly using Red Hat and being trained in Red Hat, it was easy enough to migrate some of those skills. Unix variants as well. I covered the bottom line is it's Unix, and they teach Unix, Linux, and Red Hat on top of that. And so I think it's a good fundamental course. There are 3 levels of certification available. There's technician, engineer, and architect. And it's advisable to have completed each lower level before you take on the higher level. Advisable, not everyone does. Some real brain boxes can do it straight off. Each level is trained by Red Hat. Red Hat would like everyone to take every single module for every single exam. That's how they kind of market it. I mean, that's fair enough. They teach this and they want to earn their money. But the reality is, I think, if you're a really experienced Linux user and if you have taken maybe 1 or 2 courses with Red Hat, you could pass an RHCT. I think the RHCE is a different kettle of fish. I do think that taking some of the Red Hat courses, or a reasonable amount of them to get there, is possibly a valuable thing if you're going to take that exam. The actual certification is current for, they say, 2 releases of the enterprise cycle, which it's a little bit ambiguous exactly what current actually means, but certainly from an employer's point of view, if they were to look at a website, a validation site, they could see that your certification is still current within 2 release cycles. So that could mean that your certification is valid for, say, 3 to 4 years. Although, really, once you've taken the RHCE, it really is valid for life, because the fundamentals and the core knowledge that you've gained and taking that route will probably stay with you. In the UK, I think there are approximately 6 training centres and test centres. They're easy enough to get hold of and purchase certification slots from. The actual test centre I know quite well is Guildford. They're pretty warm, friendly bunch and they're fairly accommodating, I think. Why Red Hat? It's really highly acclaimed generally. The depth and quality of the content relative, the relevance and the portability of the content is as well. And the actual exam of the RHCE is considered to be a good test of the simultaneous application of skills and theory under a simulation of real-world pressure. So they put you under pressure to actually get through this. That's one of the things I found the hardest, was to deal with the anxiety and nerves whilst having to actually pass each section before you could move on to actually gain your certification. But I think it was worth doing that in the sense that if I was put under pressure, and often am in a real world situation, and I need to solve problems and give answers very, very quickly under pressure and get it right, the exam, the application exam has actually given me some of that insight to do that, and I feel that was worth it, even though fairly painful at times. But everyone's different in how they see the quality of that. I think a really, really important development in the training, Linux certification, Linux training, is LPI. It's a community-driven training certification program, and it, like open source itself, is also very readily available, and the structure and program of the certification is very readily available for organisations and training providers and delivery agents to take this training and actually form it into something of their own, repackage it and use it like you would perhaps open source code. It's an independent non-profit corporation based in Canada, again, which has evolved out of the Linux community, focusing solely on setting certification standards for Linux. The training's built around the Linux standard base, and the group perceived a need for an accepted certification process which basically recognises the talent and also gives a measure of the amount of hard work a Linux user has put into understanding their subject. LPI is geared towards the system administrator, so that's a very useful certification program to look at. Again, it offers 3 levels of certification, and training providers basically can adopt any level they want. They can take the basics of it, repackage it, put out their own training, but they have to be have some validation with LPI to actually provide that training. It's not something you can just do, and it's got to have some sort of linking to LPI. There's a lot of training material out there for LPI, a lot of self-study material. I've got a few links which I'll show you later, and resources. And it's kindly lent me the LPSI one, which is equivalent to, well, this is actually version 1, and version 2 is out now, and it's the same with the RHCE study guide as well. This is version 1, there's version 2 out, and these are actually really useful resources as amongst training as well. So I found this one particularly useful. And finally, I'll just quickly mention CLP. Certified Linux Professional, Certified Linux Engineer are the 2 levels offered by Novell on the SUSE platform, RPM platform, and a little bit like Red Hat, there are a number of registered test centres, and they suggest that you take Novell modules or course modules to actually bring you up to speed for taking these exams. I don't think they're as well known and well used exam certification courses, but they're there, and I'm sure they'll stay there and expand as Novell does. Okay. I'll put a table in the talk. I don't expect you to absorb all of that now, but it'll be available online later on anyway. I think the accuracy is reasonable on that. If anyone notices anything that's erroneous in there, I'll happily update it. But it's just a comparison really of the obviously the type of certification, the levels you can get to, the target audience, really the skills type that you can reach with the certification, and price. And that's quite a contentious issue with Red Hat training being on the fairly expensive side. Linux Plus is actually quite expensive for the level it takes you to. Novell again a lot cheaper. So, and also looking at the current the time the certification is current for is interesting as well. I think the LPI for 10 years is fairly reasonable really. I think that looks pretty good. Okay, is there any questions on that?
Presumably this doesn't include the actual cost of the training?
No, it doesn't, no. Well, I say Red Hat, I think per module, sometimes leading up to the IHCT, we're talking about £200. Correct me if I'm wrong, but yeah, it's about £200 a module. The IHCE can be taken at the end of a rapid track training course, which is a boot camp, almost American style boot camp course. That is about £1,900. It's a 4 days of fairly grueling, intensive, full-on training. It really is full-on, and the final day, if you feel okay at the end of that is the exam itself, and it's pretty tough. It's pretty tough going. A lot of people take the course, especially migrating from Unix environments, commercial Unix environments, go on the rapid track, and amongst other groups of people. But it's a good course.
The only figure I've seen is sort of £2,000 or £3,000 for a week's training on the LPI.
Yes.
LPI one at the end.
Yeah, that's probably a good thing to add to that actually. But the LPI can be very expensive as well. The boot camps. Yeah.
It was one I saw. I think. I'm sure there are others.
Certainly over 1,000 and below 2.
Yeah, it can be pricey. So. Okay. Just a couple of notes about why I personally chose the IHCE. I'd always used it. I've used it for years, a number of years, since about '99. So I felt it natural to follow that particular program. I was pleased with the way that the skills were transferable across platforms as well. They teach Linux and Red Hat, so that was quite good. I think the pass rate is often a contentious matter as well, and it's not really that high, to be honest. It's I think about 40% on the day of the exam pass, IHCE level, and more get the IHCT level. They say that those which take the exam a second time, I think about 70 to 80% people pass, and of course third time and so on, it's much higher. So it's fairly tough and a bit of a risk to take for for your company and organisation and yourself as an individual. But to get there, I just used a mixture of experience, experimentation, study guides, product documentation, how-tos, man pages, online documentation, mailing lists, you name it, anything that would give me the knowledge. Everything, yeah. And I think it's important to say with the IHC, it's important to know the difference between the versions as well. I think that's worth mentioning. Again, I would say it can be expensive. If your employers will take some of the load, and you can take some of the load, which is what I did actually, and that worked out okay to do it that way. I mean, it was just sort of scrimmed to save on a few other hobbies that I couldn't do. So, but, I say it's given me confidence to present a strong argument for use of open source in a commercial environment where there would be scepticism. So I think that's a good thing. Obviously, there's very high standards emerging out there, which is another good thing. I think one of the things to be clear about with the IHC is that they have an NDA. I'm not sure what the acronym stands for, but it's just wise not to go into the guts of the exam itself or too much detail of the actual process of the exams. And I think that is to protect the quality and standard of the examinations as well. If people just took the exam, jotted everything down, put it online, few mailing lists, IRC, then the quality of that, taking that exam would be reduced massively. So they're very strict about that, and it's understandable, really.
For what it's worth, LPI has something similar. You're not supposed to
Yeah.
talk about questions that you've got.
Yeah, that's worth mentioning, definitely. Yeah.
You just need to know the Red Hat exam result. That's all really you need to know.
Leading up to it, I'd just say an overview for those that are less experienced in an academic environment or haven't taken IT certification or Linux certification. This is my kind of prep talk, if you like. Leading up to the week's experience counts for everything, and experience and practice is the only way to do it. And to stay focused as well, is to stay on the subject, keep doing what the exam prescribes or the course prescribes. Always inform your test centre if you need any special requirements, because it's a long day. It's right away from 9 o'clock in the morning till 4 or 5 in the evening. So the day before, I think I don't know. As with any exam, really stop revising. Just forget about it. Do something else. Eat and drink is always important. Sleep as well. That is. I think one of the more important things for a day like that is sleep. It's just to get a really good night's sleep. You focus so much better if you can. And just get an overall strategy for the day. And if you've been preparing for this, you'll have a strategy. Just make sure it's clear in your head and you sit down and focus for it. And on the day itself, arrive in good time. Don't take any horribly long journeys or have any personal responsibilities like having to do babysitting in the lunch break or go down Tesco's, or something like that. Just completely, clear the day. Eat and drink regularly, and that's the thing that gets me sometimes. You're so focused and do what you're doing, you just forget to drink and eat. Your carbohydrate levels go down. You can't concentrate. And that's not so good. If you can during the exam, take a walk, a break. 5 minutes of rest is probably worth 20-30 minutes of scrabbling about on the keyboard trying to find out how to do something that you've forgotten. And it seems weird, just walk out and you can, and they don't mind you doing that. Again, it's normal exam prep, read the exam papers. Again, get that exam strategy. You know yourself, you know how you best function under pressure in exam environments, so let's get that strategy put together for yourself. Make sure that you are clear before you start the exam. And that's the panic thing, the adrenaline causes anxiety, which stops you from focusing. You need a paper bag, start running around, and it's not pretty sight. But the other thing, don't worry about how everyone else is doing in any exam. You're sitting there and there's other people tapping away, and it's just sort of it gets a bit sort of like a LAN game or something. So just sort of forget about everything else, really. Well, that sort of covers my overview. I've got some more resources to just run through quickly in a moment. I'll just show you those. There's the websites, the main websites for the training. They all lead straight into the certification pages. And I did a little bit of research on how local can you get Linux training. And believe it or not, Linux Plus can be done at Totton College. Red Hat's up in Guildford. I don't know about South. I really couldn't find anything on Southampton. I don't think there is. LPI Southampton, and there's a few locations. I think there's a couple in Southampton. It's worth looking on the LPI site. And there's another one in Basingstoke. And CLP can be done in Reading. So for all the people that have contacts in colleges, school, whatever, it can be done quite easily. And again, there's a reference to some study books as well. This one's been improved by, well, not approved by Red Hat, because they don't generally improve things, but this hasn't been kind of picked up for having any, major NDA breaches. So there's some other books there that are worth looking at.